On this episode of the Doctors Who podcast, we're covering part 2 of Mistborn, The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. Sazed's returning to Luthadel with some ominous news. Elend is working with Kelsier's old crew to kind of come up with a plan on how he's going to pit these two armies against each other. And Vin meets another mysterious Mistborn named Zane. Stick around.
Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Chip.
My name is Brian.
We're back to the order that we
Hey!
used to be.
How about that?
Yeah.
So, today we are talking Chapter 2, not Chapter 2, Part 2 of Well of Ascension, which is comprised of chapters...
I think it's 12 through
12
27.
through 27, for those of you keeping track at
It's
home.
kind of a big chunk.
It is a big chunk, so why don't we jump right in and talk about the things that we liked, the things that we didn't like, and yeah.
All right. So I'll go.
Sure.
All right. So things I really liked about this part. One of my favorite things in here is the whole relationship that's building between Vin and Orasura, the kandra. So it just feels like she's slowly getting Orasura to open up and kind of reveal some information. And part of it is, she's got an ulterior motive to try to figure out who the imposter in the crew is. So we know that there is a kandra that is probably working for Straff that ate someone's body, but she doesn't know whose. So she's trying to get some information out of Orasura, and due to the contract and due to being a kandra, he's very reluctant to give that up. But it just, the way Sanderson has written it, it's just this kind of slow progression where they come to kind of trust each other more and more. And I really like that part. And I also like the introduction of, I call her Tindwell. Is that
That's what
how
I
you
want.
say it?
Yeah.
So the Terrace woman, who was the first Terrace woman I think that we've met in the series, and how she kind of shows up, and I can't think of who she reminds me of yet, but it's just the way she kind of takes charge. It's like, Elend, you need to get your shit together, and we're going to change the way you look, we're going to clean your hair, we're going to cut your hair, we're going to clean you up, and we're going to make you actually present like a king in front of all these people. So we're going to give you a crown, we're going to give you, all these different things. So I kind of like that aspect of it too. I'm trying to think if there's one more thing. Straff himself, when he shows up, I don't know why I had impressions of Donald Trump. Just this arrogant ass that just, I've got everything under control, but then he gets thrown for a loop because Vin's able to use her allomantic skills against him, and he didn't even realize it at first. So I thought that was kind of fun too.
Cool. So if I had to pick out two of my favorite parts, I would say I really liked the change in how the mist was portrayed. Before it was just something that came out in the morning, if it was like a kind of a fall day, or it would come out in the evenings. But now we seem to be seeing it during the day, and when it appears during the day, people are dying, or something mysterious is happening. The swirling of the mists are changing. And we kind of get this increasing sense of uneasiness throughout this section of the book, in part due to the mysteriousness of the mist. We hear about it in the beginning with Sazed on his travels, and we come back to it at the very end. I also really like the introduction of Zane. He's a character that I don't like. I like to not like him, if that makes any sense. I feel like he is going to stir the pot and cause nothing but trouble the rest of the book, and possibly even into the third book. But I like the fact that they introduced another character. He is really the first new character outside of Tindwell.
Tindwell, yeah.
Yes. He's kind of a new player in this game. And I think he is a fascinating wrinkle to the existing world. And I guess if I had to throw in an honorable mention, I'm really kind of rooting for the Koloss army that's just like hanging out in the middle of nowhere. So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic whenever they show up.
So, from my perspective, I'm going to piggyback off of Chip. I really liked how Vin and Orasura's relationship has kind of grown, and that element of trust seems to be there. And I like how it came about, because Vin's trying to get past their strictly professional relationship a little bit, and she nails why they are like they are, why they don't engage, why they strictly are bound by the contract, and I think that surprises him. But that whole relationship I find fascinating. The whole concept of the kandra is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I also think Tindwyl.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a W?
Yeah.
Tindwyl. I think she's fascinating in that, yeah, she's cleaning up Elend, and she's a hard ass with him.
Mm-hmm.
But when she's working with Vin, she's like completely different. She approaches her completely different
Mm-hmm.
because she knows Elend has basically been pampered his whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And Vin has come from this very difficult background,
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't want to give her more of that. So I think that nuance is very cool. And we even have a scene with Sazed and Tindwyl,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of neat too, because I think she came on his request.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I find kind of fascinating was we spend most of this part with Elend and the crew coming up with this plan to get Straff's army to fight Set's army, and then we end this part with Elend being deposed by the assembly, no longer the
Mm-hmm.
king, which basically throws out all of their planning.
Thanks to all the rules that he created, or the laws he created.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's his own doing,
Mhm.
because he set this...
He gave the power to the people. So
Right. So, yeah, those are the things that stuck out to me. I mean, obviously there were like little things that I really liked.
yeah.
Like when Marsh and Sazed were infiltrating the Inquisitor stronghold, and
that was kind of cool.
Sazed
That
did
was
like
cool.
the controlled
Marsh
fall.
is so much creepier now.
Yes.
Than,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So he's got to fold back into this somewhere. I know that he really just had these little
Yeah.
scenes in this part, but he's got to come back into the story. I'm guessing.
Agreed.
He flat out and we can talk about this too. But he flat
Do
out
it.
disappeared in that
Do it.
in that
Talk about
scene.
it.
Yeah.
Well, so we get out of essentially they go into the stronghold.
Yeah, the conventicle of Saran.
Thank you. And so they go in, and then all the creepy stuff they find. Like they find this hidden room, this room down in the basement that's just all sorts of creepy. It looked like that's maybe where they had their ritualistic sacrifices or their
like,
transformations.
That's how they turn people into... Yeah.
Yeah.
And like there are no lights because the Inquisitors
Are
don't
blinded.
see.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Though
how
they
the
see
heck
somehow,
do
but not with their
How the heck
eyes.
do they get around?
Well, then the other big discovery there is the tablet that Sazed
Mhm.
finds, which I assume are the epigraphs before each chapter, kind of like when Vin found the logbook in book 1, and those
Yep.
ended up being the I assume that that's what is before kind of each chapter, and this
That's
one
what
is. But it's Elendi again, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that was the character from the logbook, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
I think
That
it
sounds
might
right.
be. But I those are nice little touches, though, that kind of tie everything together.
So they get out of. Oh, actually, were you going to
No.
talk more? So they end up going out, and then it's like a scene later. They're like Sazed kind of they make camp, and then they wake up, and then Sazed realizes that Marsh has left him,
Mhm.
and he's kind of all out by himself, and he's like, well, I'll just kind of wait around for a while, and then he never shows back up. Marsh he still gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna show up at some point with the steel nails through his eyes, and
Well, he already
It's gonna
has
be great.
those, doesn't he?
but he's
He's got
gonna
those.
show up again just
Sure.
out of the blue.
Well, here's my thought on that, because he just up and disappeared,
Mhm.
and when they were rooting through the Inquisitor stronghold, he was like, "We can't stay long.
Mhm.
We got to get in. We got to get out quick." So, did he leave, or did something come and take him?
It's an interesting question.
Just a thought. And what I really thought was cool was, Sazed really using like his metal mines to like increase the speed of his journey,
Mhm.
to make himself lighter in the fall, to increase his eyes. I mean, to do
Yeah.
all of these things.
Well, he used, was it his copper mine that he used in the conventicle, where he was basically capturing all this information or absorbing
Yeah.
all this information so that they could break it down later. And
it really illustrates the genius of Sanderson's magic system that he created for this. I mean, there was one part where
it doesn't even feel like a magic system. It feels scientific.
It does.
Like it's just
This is when he's I think looking at a village or something, and he's talking about using his copper mine to try and find out about like the village or the area and its religion or things like that. And it says he searched through one of his indexes looking for the right piece. The index was growing fuzzy, the information difficult to remember, which meant that he'd switched it from copper mined to memory and back again too many times. Knowledge inside a copper mine would remain pristine, but anything inside his head, even for only a few minutes, would decay. He would have to rememorize the index later. So, like, just that level of detail was fascinating. And I'm just, I'm in awe of the the complexity of the system in place.
Well, and I like how there's the whole ferrochemical side that Sazed uses, and then they've got the elementic side that, for the Mistborn, but that they kind of balance each other out in different ways. Yeah. They've got strengths and weaknesses of their own, and it's just so well thought through and developed.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I do wish Zane had a different name, because all I can picture is Billy Zane.
I was the exact same way.
I like the character, and I like that he's Elend's brother, who Elend doesn't even know exists, and that he has. I can't remember if it was this section where he was basically, enslaved by Straff to do all these different things, and then you figure out that Straff's basically got all these mistresses because he's trying to give birth to different Mistborn, or trying to give birth to a Mistborn, or at least Allomancers, and so it's just this. There's a whole dark element there that's just twisted and wrong, but I just can't get Billy Zane out of my head though when I read Zane. So.
Well, I mean, and every time I think Billy Zane, I think about him in Zoolander.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a walk-off.
I go back and forth between that, Titanic, and then he was in an episode of Psych.
Really?
Yeah.
You should listen to your friend Billy Zane. He's a cool dude.
Yeah, right.
I had to go look up that quote because I couldn't quite...
Well, that's when David Bowie is the judge of the walk-off.
That's right.
Yeah. But also, my character in your Star Wars game is Zane Starfell.
Yeah.
So, you probably think of me, too.
I did think of you.
I thought so.
Me, too.
Yeah. But kind of tying in Sazed's arc to what Vin is seeing in the city, like, the mists and what's going on with them, right? Because Sazed is seeing some very disturbing things about how the mist is actually like appearing in the daytime and killing people,
right?
Like leaving others to go and like targeting specific people and like strangling them and things in the street. And then Vin is, of course, seeing this. I think they're calling it the Watcher, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like this.
Well, and then
entity
she's
in
tying
the
everything
mist.
into the deepness too. So we should talk about that next time. But, But there's a lot of elements that are being planted.
Yes, there are.
It's the coming Sanderland, I assume.
It is. And this is a great time to transition from part 1 of this discussion to part 2. So if you did enjoy what we've got so far, we would love for you to hit that thumbs up. Please hit the comments section. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. If we misinterpreted something, we want to know all of that. And we're very happy to carry on that conversation down below. We will be coming back to you next week with part 2, so please hit that subscribe button and hit the bell notification so that when the new episode does pop, you do get notified.
It's part 2 of part 2.
Part 2 of part 2, yeah.
Right.
It's not confusing at all. No.
Just don't think about it.
Right.
Just let it happen.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate you sticking around, and until next time.
Alonzi.